On this Friday night, explosive sexual assault scandal. Dozens of complainants come forward against the late billionaire behind Harrods. One Canadian's damning allegations.
And he proceeded to get into this bed and on top of me.
Outrage over an apparent target of organized crime. The child found dead near a Hells Angels hideout. Canadian emissions and the climate crisis. Fresh calls for the country to get back on track.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sarah McDonald.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are learning more tonight about the growing allegations against Mohammed Al Fayed, the father of Princess Diana's partner Dodi and the former owner of the British luxury department store Harrods. At least 37 women have now revealed their intention to bring a civil case against the company over allegations of sexual assault and rape. Among the accusers are 3 Canadians, including a Peterborough, Ontario woman who is speaking out for the first time. Redmond Shannon has her story and a warning first. Some of the details are disturbing.
It was something beyond my own imagination.
Amy recalls how she felt 3 decades ago getting a job selling handbags in Harrods. Speaking in London with Canadian journalists, she remembers her first introduction to Mohammed Al Fayed when she was 21. The man who mixed with royalty would regularly walk the floors of his department store.
I was also told that the chairman wanted to meet me and was told to look good for him. He told me not to go to the shop floor anymore, that I was with him now.
That meant working in his office.
The fondling, the grabbing, the groping, the kissing.
Al Fayed paid for Amy to get a medical checkup. She didn't realize it would include a sexual health test. Then came a business trip to Paris.
The door handle turned, and that's when I was like, here we go. And he proceeded to get into this bed and on top of me and assault me with clear intent of raping me.
Amy believes saying 5 words out loud saved her.
And I just said, if my mother only knew. He just stopped in his tracks, got up, and left the room.
Al Fayed died last year. Despite decades of accusations and police investigations, he was never charged with a crime. Amy is one of 37 women, including 2 other Canadians, who have now joined a legal action against the current owners of Harrods.
He was a monster. He was a monster enabled by a system.
The women allege they were intimidated by others around Al Fayed to keep them quiet. Harrods' current owners have apologised. They say they are utterly appalled by the allegations and that this is now a very different workplace.
I would like to see people responsible for driving a mechanism to victimize women take accountability.
The lawyers stress this is, for now at least, only a civil case. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Turning now to the Middle East, where 2 days after exploding pagers were allegedly set off by Israel, there is more escalation and vows of retribution tonight. This time, Israel is openly acknowledging it struck and killed a senior official with the militant group Hezbollah. Nathaniel Dove on the deadly attack in a densely populated part of Beirut, and the fresh allegations that Israeli leadership has no plans for a ceasefire anytime soon.
It's a major escalation of violence in a week already full of deadly attacks. A fresh bombardment on Lebanon, the largest since last October, and retribution against Israel. In recent days, Israel allegedly triggered exploding pagers and launched airstrikes. It now claims its latest attacks killed senior Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Akil, linked to a bombing in the 1980s that killed American Marines. As Lebanon's hospitals flood with even more victims, the question hanging over the region is, what comes next?
We will know in the coming days. This is very secret, and I suspect that only a few in the Israeli top leadership know what really is going on.
Since the October 7th attack, the 2 sides and Hezbollah's ally and sponsor Iran have traded fire, but not triggered an all-out war. Analyst Gaith Al-Amari says Hezbollah is likely looking to counterattack to save face. But it appears Israel is sending a message that the rules have changed.
This is usually the most likely recipe for miscalculation.
In a speech Thursday, Hezbollah's leader again said they'll stop attacking if there's a Gaza ceasefire. President Joe Biden says the U.S. is striving to finalize a deal.
A lot of things don't look realistic until we get them done. We have to keep at it.
But the Wall Street Journal reports senior American officials aren't sure one will ever get done. And an investigation by Israeli media reports Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did everything in his power to ensure ceasefire negotiations were not successful. This man says Lebanon is now living in a war. Weeks away from the one-year anniversary of the Hamas October attacks, the region could be headed towards more bloodshed. Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Toronto.
The race to the White House is getting down to the wire with early in-person voting underway in the U.S. presidential election. First up, voters in Minnesota, Virginia, and South Dakota. Mail-in ballots are also being sent across the United States. It's all happening as new polling suggests Vice President Kamala Harris has the edge over former President Donald Trump in key battleground states. Jackson Proskow reports.
There you go.
It's a 1.5 foot long ballot.
Early voting brought big turnout in Virginia. How are you both feeling about this election?
I'm nervous.
Very nervous.
As voters face a campaign they weren't expecting, with interest and enthusiasm amped up by Kamala Harris's surprise candidacy.
I think it's the most important election we've had in my lifetime.
When it was Biden, I was kind of sleepy on it, and I was like, I don't even know if I really want to vote.
45 days out, and the candidates are worlds apart in their strategies.
Kamala Harris!
Thursday night, Harris held a town hall with Oprah Winfrey and reams of Hollywood stars.
Ultimately, the question before us is what kind of country do we want to live in?
While Trump courted fresh controversy after telling a group of Jewish voters this about who would be to blame if he loses the election.
The Jewish people would have a lot to do with the loss.
Polls show Harris with only a slight advantage in the polls, still within the margin of error.
Both of these candidates haven't done a whole lot in terms of explaining why people's lives would be better under their administration. And I think both of them are going to start turning to that.
Outside factors make it more complicated. Take battleground North Carolina, where CNN uncovered explicit online comments by the Republican candidate for governor, Mark Robinson. Robinson allegedly referred to himself as a black Nazi, expressed support for reinstating slavery, and detailed an alleged affair with his sister-in-law.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids, okay?
Trump has repeatedly endorsed him.
He's outstanding.
Now in new ads, Harris is trying to tie Trump back to his troubled pick in the state. Meanwhile, in the battleground state of Georgia, the pro-Trump Elections Board has ruled that all ballots must now be hand-counted. That could delay determining who won the state and perhaps the nation by days, perhaps even weeks. Sarah?
Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks. In Kentucky, a sheriff is in custody tonight, accused in the shooting death of a judge inside his own chambers.
This community is small in nature, and we're all shook.
District Judge Kevin Mullins was fatally shot inside the Letcher County Courthouse on Thursday. The suspected gunman, Sheriff Sean Steins, is charged with first-degree murder. It's alleged Sheriff Steins shot Mullins multiple times after an argument. No one else was inside the chambers at the time, and police are working to pinpoint the motive. A 24-year-old man is in custody tonight in Quebec after allegedly starting an altercation that left 3 people injured. According to Chateauguay police, the 3 men in their 50s sustained minor injuries, and one of them had to be treated in hospital. Police won't confirm whether a knife caused those injuries. The suspect, who was arrested at the scene, is expected to face criminal charges tomorrow. And Quebec's public security minister says he is shocked and disgusted after the body of a 14-year-old boy was found near a biker clubhouse in Frampton this week. The boy was killed after allegedly being recruited to carry out a contract in Quebec's Beauce region. The death is believed to be the latest chapter in a long simmering turf war between the province's street gangs and Hells Angels. Mike Armstrong reports.
The first sign something was up was this charred vehicle. It was found overnight early Monday morning in a field outside the town of Frampton. Inside, according to reports, multiple assault rifles. Just hours later, police were called to a biker bunker about a kilometer away. It's the clubhouse of the Red Devils motorcycle gang, a group affiliated with the Hells Angels. There, they found what is being described as a dismembered body. The identification of the corpse was done at the police lab in Montreal. The body was so badly mutilated, it was ID'd by dental records. It turned out to be a 14-year-old boy. He was, according to reports, a member of a Montreal street gang, the EGK, Everybody Gets Killed. The teen would have been hired to attack or intimidate the bikers. How he died is still uncertain. Quebec's public security minister reacted on social media, saying he's shocked by the news. Quote, "It is disgusting for street gangs to enlist young people, children, to do their dirty work." Now, this appears to be another flare-up in the ongoing war between street gangs and the Hells Angels. It's a fight over taxation on drug trafficking. Street gangs are refusing to pay a 10% cut to the Hells for selling on their territory. For more than a year, there have been firebombings, shootings, murders, and even kidnappings and torture sessions. Frampton isn't the only town hit this week. Hérouville, between Montreal and Quebec City, is home to a Hells Angels bunker. Overnight Wednesday, someone shot at the building. No one was injured, but a police reaction to all of it is coming. Provincial police announced Friday afternoon more than 25 different police forces will be out visiting bars this weekend and setting up roadblocks. It's being called Operation Centaur, specifically targeting organized crime. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Canada misses the mark. Coming up, the ambitious target to combat climate change.
Our world is in a crisis that we can only get through together. And the more united we are, the bigger our impact will be.
That message of unity in the face of crisis could be heard in major cities around the world today, from New York to Dhaka in Bangladesh, and in Vancouver as well. People marching to demand their governments accelerate measures to significantly cut planet warming, carbon pollution. Those climate strikes are happening because emissions, including Canada's, are not falling as fast as the science says they must. Despite progress to generate more electricity from clean sources, Canada's emissions are missing targets established by the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. As Heather Yurex-West explains, the main reason is pollution from the oil and gas sector.
At first glance, it sounds like a win.
We have a report today that from the independent organization, the Climate Institute, which shows that emissions are down again in Canada.
But in its quest to reach its climate target within the next 6 years, Canada still has a very long way to go.
And primarily because oil and gas production is expanding, emissions are increasing, it's really offsetting the progress we're seeing in other sectors like electricity.
Technology has helped reduce the amount of emissions produced per barrel in the oil and gas sector, but with the Alberta-based industry producing more oil than ever before, overall pollution is on the rise, up 1% over last year and 12% since 2005.
Oil and gas is sitting at 31% of our national inventory, so about a third of our total emissions. When those emissions keep rising, it's really hard to offset those across the other sectors.
That is despite policies in place from both the federal government and the government of Alberta to try and bring these emission numbers down. Alberta has an industrial price on carbon that allows industries to trade credits, while Ottawa has introduced subsidies and tax credits for investments in carbon capture and storage and clean tech.
The conversation isn't necessarily about more public dollars. The conversation is around creating certainty for investors to drive investment into emissions reduction technologies.
Because as it stands now, existing policies haven't been enough to see Canada's energy emissions decrease. Heather Yurex-West, Global News, Calgary.
After days of heavy downpours, Hungary's capital is bracing for catastrophic flooding. Parts of Budapest are submerged after the Danube River breached its banks. Water is already lapping the country's parliament building. Homes are swamped and the river has not even reached its peak. The worst flooding to hit Central Europe in at least 2 decades has caused widespread damage from Romania to Poland and has killed at least 24 people. Sounding the alarm over a dangerous addiction. Ahead, the impact of online gambling on the lives of Canadians. 2 lucky Canadians are basking in the glory of their historic lotto jackpot win tonight, including a retired gym teacher in Quebec. He won $40 million, half of the biggest lottery payout in Canadian history. Bernard Morissette made a last-minute purchase online with the same numbers he's played for years. On Wednesday, he got the call confirming his big win. Morissette hopes to spend part of his new fortune on his family and a professional soccer game in Italy. While winning that type of money can be life-changing, there's a darker side to gambling that has affected millions of people across this country. This week, we've shown you the science behind one of Canada's fastest-growing addictions and the calls for politicians to do something about it. Tonight, in the final part of our investigation, Jeff Semple brings us the story of a former addict whose bout with gambling is now pushing him to help others.
This is a great picture of my late dad.
Howard Reback's Montreal apartment is full of old family photographs. But this picture he keeps closest to remind him of the time he was nearly beaten to death.
This was me probably at the lowest point in my life.
Howard always enjoyed gambling, but it wasn't until a casino opened in his hometown 30 years ago that addiction took hold.
In retrospect, it sounds so moronic, but I thought that I was good at it, and I was so good that I lost everything.
In the years that followed, Howard lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, along with his home, even his wife.
I lost my mind, and whatever I won was never enough. It just became an obsession, or as we call it, an addiction.
When he couldn't pay his debts, he turned to loan sharks. They once came to his office and put him in hospital. In desperation, he asked his older brother, Billy, for money.
It was just completely out of nowhere.
Billy had moved to L.A. and had no idea his brother was an addict. Howard claimed he had cancer and needed money for treatment.
And he didn't want anybody to really know, and he was going to get some special drugs from Columbia University, and it just struck me as odd.
Billy sent him money again and again before eventually discovering the truth. The family held an intervention.
A better brother has never been born. And when I was due to get reamed over the coals, he did what he had to do.
It put a giant dent, if not a huge car crash, in our relationship. But once he admitted he had a problem, that was the beginning of the path to recovery.
Howard went to rehab and eventually back to school to become a gambling addictions therapist. Over 20 years, he's helped thousands of patients and lost some to suicide. He warns gambling today is far easier and more dangerous.
Gambling has exploded. Having a gambling addiction, it's a sickness. We have to educate people.
Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Next, the biggest name in baseball blasts his way into the record books. You don't need to be a baseball fan to appreciate what Shohei Otani accomplished last night. He became the first player in Major League history to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season. And he did it in spectacular fashion. Eric Sorensen walks us through the record-breaking night and how special Otani's talent truly is.
For a single game, it was extraordinary. Shohei Otani's third homer, 10 runs batted in, 2 stolen bases, one of the best games anyone's ever had, but that's not the story. It's this, earlier, his 50th home run of the season, and this, his 50th stolen base. Never been done before. Even in Florida, fans demanded a curtain call.
I'm happy, relieved, and very respectful to the peers and everybody who came before who played this sport of baseball.
Teammate Miguel Rojas sees Otani every day.
I feel like he's the best player that ever played the game.
And the view from the opposing dugout?
He is doing things that I've never seen done before in the game. Yeah, I wish I was in the stands, not in the dugout, seeing it.
50-50. Shohei Otani has set a baseball record that was never even talked about. Here are the 50 home run hitters who were the top base stealers before now. Big names, but none with more than 24 stolen bases. Otani has 51 homers and 51 stolen bases and 9 games still to play. He combines skills you just never see in one player. A power hitter who is fleet of foot, and he's one of the best pitchers in the game. Otani hasn't pitched this year for his new team because of elbow surgery, but he's been an all-star pitcher as well.
He runs like a locomotive. He throws 100 miles an hour when he's healthy. He hits balls 450, 500 feet. He is once in a generation, and maybe 2 generations. We won't see this again.
He is a superstar in Asia, beloved by teammates and fans alike. Could Shohei be any more popular? Of course, there's his dog Decoy, who delivered the first pitch recently. Naturally, he's a good boy, too. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Sarah McDonald. Tonight's Your Canada is the view from Cypress Mountain in West Vancouver, British Columbia. We love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Jeff Semple will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.